All right, my buddy Dave Wannstedt, former Chicago Bear head coach, Dolphins head coach, coordinator for the Cowboys when they won Super Bowl 27, a friend, and by the way, still is all over Chicago media and kicking ass and taking names. So I'll be in Chicago here not long from now. You know how much I love the city. I've said about Justin Fields, here's my concern. I know he's a big, strong athlete. I know he's a good kid. I do worry with a defensive coach. You see a lot of these young quarterbacks who do well, they have an offensive coach. The game's changed. All the rules now are against defense. It's almost unfair to be a defensive coach. You can't coach any. The middle of the field, it's all offense now. And I think my bigger problem with Justin Fields is I know he's a great athlete. But year 3, Russell Wilson ran around for 2 years. Kyler Murray ran around for 2 years. So did Lamar. This year, year 3 to me, Dave, is the year a young quarterback who runs has got to sit in the pocket. Because I do think your legs buy you a couple of years, I've said this, for the light to go on. Russell Wilson, Mahomes all say it's year 3, the game slows down, the lights go on. Yep. I think I would keep Justin Fields. I wouldn't draft another quarterback. But I do think he's got to show me something by Thanksgiving, or I'm having meetings with the owner and the GM and moving on. Your thoughts on where we are with him?
Well, the whole thing in Chicago, and that's why I was so excited. And I'm really, it's disappointing that Philadelphia, in my opinion, because I thought Philadelphia would win the Super Bowl. But in my mind, the blueprint for the Chicago Bears is the Philadelphia Eagles. I really believe this. I mean, you look it wasn't long ago, 2 years ago, I'm doing a show on Fox or one of those stations, and I thought that he would be beat out, talking about Jalen Hurts. I did not think he would finish the starter at the end of the year with the Philadelphia Eagles. I thought that he was not going to be the guy. And what do? They add to the offensive line. They sign A.J. Brown, a big receiver. They draft a receiver in Smith. And all of a sudden, this guy is one of the better players in the league. I really believe that the Bears can do that. Tyreek Hill with the Dolphins himself is making more money than the entire receiver group of the Chicago Bears. I mean, he didn't have a whole lot of help. He truly didn't. I thought they did everything they could to give him a chance. But I think the blueprint for the Bears is the Philadelphia Eagles.
So would you go out, for instance, if you kind of look at the positions that matter? Because I will say this. I think Claypool and Mooney are good number 2 or 3 receivers. Komet's a solid tight end. The backs are serviceable. Would you go out if you were the GM and go get a number 1 receiver, DeAndre Hopkins, go get a number 1 edge rusher? Those 2 things are paramount. And then they drafted a good corner and a safety last year. The secondary's better. And then you got you got all your picks. But if you were going to spend your money, if you look at positions that matter, go get a star receiver for Justin, because I think Mooney's a very capable 2 or 3. Yeah, Claypool's a 3. And Komet's a really nice tight end. So would you, if with Ryan Poles, would you say, listen, we're going to go buy an edge rusher? That's what Russell Wilson got. And we're going to go buy a star receiver. And then I think the defense, I think the O-line, there's some really nice O-linemen, 2nd, 3rd round. Is that kind of how you would attack it?
No, you know what, Colin? And I've thought about this and watching college and watching these guys. We know that they have more free agent money to spend than anybody in the league, okay? I would spend free agent money on veteran, proven offensive linemen. I would use my draft picks for defense. I really would. If I could get a proven or 2 offensive linemen that could come in here and they say this guy is a difference maker, an outstanding player, I would spend money there. Because I'll tell you what, in my opinion, young offensive linemen, they're not getting developed in college like they were back in the day because of the rules. You can't hit. You can't have contact. And that's the only way you get better as an offensive lineman. And the same thing's happened in the NFL. So, you can get a young defensive guy. He's athletic. He's fast. Teach him a seat. Get him aggressive. And these guys can be stars early. Micah Parsons, as an example. There's a lot of defensive guys. I would I would spend big-time money on a receiver if I was the Bears, a free agent, and I would go get an offensive lineman and spend money. and I would focus in on the draft with my early picks.
You know, it's interesting you say that, because the truth is, even great offensive players, great tight ends, great quarterbacks, it's choreography on offense, whereas defense is speed, the ability to blow stuff off, react. Like, let's say you get an edge, you get Will Anderson. Well, shit,
Yep.
you just solved your edge rusher. I mean, honestly. And then to your point, the draft, in the first 2 rounds, they got a first, a second, they have 2 fifths. Yeah, I could see DeAndre Hopkins, an elite tackle, and just load up on defense. I will say this. Their first 2 picks last year, they got a corner and a safety, both nice players. Both were really good, played a lot. And Eberflus, as a defensive coordinator, probably one of his strengths is teaching football.
Yep.
So, but years ago, I was talking to, I think, Chris Ballard, or it was somebody, and he was saying, it's this league, even for great offensive players, it's hard, Dave. You know that. It takes 2 to 3 years for Mahomes and Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, I was at Dallas with Troy Aikman. It was Troy's 3rd year when he started coming along. So I even back in the day, it took time. It took Terry Bradshaw longer than that. We know the story with him. But you look at this thing, and the Bears are going to run the ball. Because of a defensive head coach, you can say what you want out there, people. And this is not because I'm defense, but defensive head coaches, number one, that they understand the importance of field position. They understand the importance of keeping your defense rested, manageable first downs. Most defensive coaches believe in the running game. And the Bears have an offensive staff right now that, hey, obviously one of the top 2 teams running the football in the NFL. They know how to run the ball. I think life can become real easy, or a lot easier, for Justin Fields when he gets some good weapons around him. I really do. I think I think there's a lot of upside here. And you know what? One other point, and I'll get off this. In Chicago, you got to be a different type of guy. This kid got beat up, okay? I mean, physically beat up. It's a tough city to play in. It's real tough to be the quarterback in this town. I mean, I've lived that coaching here. And this guy went up there in 10-degree temperatures, beat up, and he went out on that field and he laid it on the line. Some cities, that means nothing. In the city of Chicago, that carries a lot of weight for a player, particularly your quarterback.
So when Sean Payton would come on the show with me this year on Mondays, he said, Parcells used to say your first 15 picks, do not take an undersized player, regardless of position. Tua is not a top 15 pick. Kyler Murray, now we're finding, doesn't want to get hit. Jalen Hurts, great player, 2nd round. Drew Brees, 2nd round. Smaller players. I mean, Dave, half this league is undrafted. So I look at Bryce Young. He's 5'10 and a half. That's about 3 inches short. And he's going to weigh, in the combine, he's over 200. He ate a lot of steaks, a lot of potatoes. Yeah, that. He's going to play at 196. What do you do with him? I do think I think he has 2 things I'll say. He's accurate, and Dave, I watched him in high school and college. His pocket awareness is fantastic. He has an absolute feel for the pocket, which I think, Dave, is innate. I don't think you can teach it. Some guys never. Sam Darnold, love him, never feels it. Ever. He runs away too early. He doesn't see it. Bryce Young's pocket awareness is A++. He's small. To me, he doesn't work in Chicago, a windy, cold northern environment.
Right.
But God, Houston, Dave, Atlanta, a dome, Dave, I don't know. How do you pass him up?
No, I think that, I talked to about 8. I'm a member of the 33rd team, okay? Parcells actually got it started. And we were talking on there. There was 5 or 6 general managers on there. And they talk to people around the league, GMs, personnel people more than I do. And there is a real split feeling on these quarterbacks. I mean, Bryce Young, you're talking about in the right situation. But after this combine workout, CJ Stroud, there's some people there's one guy that was talking about Will Levis, how he gets the ball out. And for their style of offense, he would be perfect. And then the Richardson's kid, he's got all the intangibles, I guess. I have never studied him. 1 year doing it makes me a little nervous with him. But the point is that there's not in NFL general managers' minds, there's not a Trevor Lawrence in this opinion. So,
No.
I would not be surprised. I mean, I think that it'll be Bryce Young, but I don't know. I mean, I've heard a lot of different stories, and it's a matter of who's going to fit in your offense. You talked about the different cities, the mentality of your offense. It's going to be real interesting. I don't know any negatives except the size. Look at, Drew Brees. People passed on him. We did at the Dolphins because of his size, but he was very accurate when he was at Purdue, and he moved in the pocket. Drew Brees did a lot of things that Bryce Young does. He really does, without as good a supporting cast like they have at Alabama now.
All right, the NFL season is officially over. So we got March Madness coming up, final stretch of the NBA, the NHL season. Now is the time. You want tickets? Check out the Game Time app. It's the fastest growing ticket app. They got you covered. March Madness tickets, NBA tickets, playoff tickets, NHL tickets, Game Time. They also do comedy shows. They also do concerts. Anything you want to attend, check out the Game Time app. And right now, $20 off your first purchase. How? Download the Game Time app and use the redeem code Colin. Me, COLIN, $20 off your first tickets. Comedy, concerts, we got March Madness. You got to be at those games. NHL, NBA, final stretch run. The Game Time app, last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. I said this in the preamble to this interview about the Combine. Belichick, Sean McVay, Matt LaFleur have said, nah, I'm not going to go. Here's what I worry about. Dave, when you play in a college or a pro football season, you're hurt by week 3. Nobody's healthy. You match up against guys that are bigger and stronger than you. I want to see game tape. I worry. It's a complete cottage industry now, Coach. Prepping for the Wonderlic, prepping for the Combine. Shit, I think you get fooled. I think Belichick has been fooled by players. These guys come in, Dave. If I went to you, and Trent Dilfer said something to me years ago. He goes, 75% of these guys don't love football. They love what football provides for them. And I was told by my agent, get in the best shape of your life, you'll never have to work. You're going to be a late first rounder. Dave, I look at the Combine now. I think you get fooled a lot. I see some of these Combine beauty pageant contestants. I mean, where did you fall in on it?
I agree with you. Well, it wasn't the extreme back then as it is now. But I won't give the names. I've worked with about 4 or 5 agents in Naples, Florida, in your old stomping grounds, and they would bring in their college players. And one of the challenges I had was getting him to draw the circles, Colin. Picture this on a board, the circles of an offensive formation, where one guy was drawn, the size of a dinner plate, and the other guy then next to him was the guard who was the size of a quarter. I mean, prepping them. So at the end of this week, all I did was what you're talking about. This is how you got to answer the questions. This is how, when they draw on the board, this is what you got to draw. So you're 100% right. And these guys are getting scolded, yes, from the agent, but there's a lot of guys like mine, ex-coaches, that are spending a lot of time with these guys. I sat in those meetings for over 15 years as a head coach and a GM and head coach at the Dolphins. I asked those questions. I know what the coaches want to hear when the tape goes on and you make a mistake. I know exactly what they don't want to hear too. So, I mean, I'm one of those guys that's been scolding them. You're 100% right.
Yeah, no, I mean, shit, there's a real industry out there for a Dave Wannstedt. Dave, here's a lot of money. Teach these kids
how to draw circles. How to draw circles. Think about it.
It is crazy. But, listen, it's I don't blame the kid. I don't blame the agent. So, Jerry Jones had a comment this week about how the Cowboys are a little limited because of Dak's contract. And I've said this before. If I didn't do what I do, my dream job would be an NFL general manager. I love the architecture of it. I love all of it. I would have to hire an attorney to be my capologist, but I love building teams. I love the draft, and I have since I was, in my teens, 20s. And I've always had this theory about the NFL. Pay big money infrequently. That almost always the answer is, outside of quarterback, rush end, increasingly star wide receiver, and maybe corner. Dave, I think there's like 4 to 5 positions in the world now. And I didn't used to include receiver, but because of rule changes, I do. Quarterback, left tackle, receiver, edge rusher, corner. I would love a really good Mike linebacker to call my signals. It's not, I don't have to have it, but most great defenses have had a really great, heady middle linebacker. But I look at this stuff. When you look at San Francisco and Philadelphia, is there an argument to be made that you just keep drafting quarterbacks and load up your roster? And if you draft a quarterback every year, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round, you're going to find a Brock Purdy. You're going to find a guy out there. And what you want is just a great roster until you find a star quarterback, which there's 7 on the planet. Because I look at the Niners and I think, hell, I don't care who quarterbacks next year. They're winning 12 games.
Well, you're making some interesting points. I just had a great conversation this week with Mike Giddings Jr., who his dad started Pro Scout. And they do the color codes, the blue, the red, the gold, and they rate every player. It doesn't matter what you were 2 years ago. It's how did you perform this year? And over the last 10 years, according to their service, every quarterback that's gone to the Super Bowl has played at a blue level except one, according to them. Back in 2015, Peyton Manning played at a red. That's the year that he went out and he was hurt. His neck was bothering him at Denver, and they won the Super Bowl. I'm talking about Super Bowl winning coach. Now, here's the other stat that's real interesting. There has not been a blue left tackle in the last 10 years. Now, when I say blue, you're going to say, oh, wait, Orlando Brown with Kansas City. He's a great player. He is a great player. But this year, he didn't play at a blue level. Watch the tape. And that's the conversation I'm having with Gids. But he said the positions that must be playing at a blue level to win a Super Bowl over the last 10 years, your defensive ends, your corners, and your quarterback. Those are the positions. Now, you got to have 13 blue players, not to get too deep in this for our viewers, but you got to have average 13 blues on your team to win a Super Bowl. That's what most Super Bowl teams have, okay? Blue means that they're playing at the highest level. So Brock Purdy, he might not be talent-wise Patrick Mahomes, but if Kyle Shanahan can get him playing at a blue level where he's not turning the ball over, he's completing 70% of his passes, right? I mean, he's doing the things that you have to do if you're a top quarterback in this league. Then you got a chance to win a Super Bowl. So it's a real interesting concept, and him and I were talking about it because I was talking about some of the Bear stuff. Red players, blue players, because Ryan Poles was talking about it on the radio. How many blue players they need to get? They don't have very many, if any, at the Bears. And so we were just talking about those numbers, but it's an interesting stat. You brought up Purdy. My point is you have to have a quarterback, not blue talent-wise, understand, but play at a blue level to win a Super Bowl. That's been that way for the last 10 years, and I don't think it's going to change. So when you start looking at the teams that can win Super Bowls, you got to look at the quarterback, pass rushers, and corners. That's your starting point.
So Aaron Rodgers goes on a darkness retreat. My takeaway is I'm pretty new school on this. I got fairly young kids. Whatever it takes for you to get your mind clear, shit, I don't care, Dave. If you got to go to therapy, when the season ends, go take 6 weeks, go find yourself. But I've had this belief for a long time that Favre and Aaron are really similar, that the lack of an owner allows the quarterback for the Packers, if talented, to essentially run the franchise. And because Green Bay is the smallest market, if they're bad at quarterback, they're not on television. In my childhood, 70s and 80s, the Packers were never on television.
Right.
They really weren't. And I think they're paralyzed by it. If there was a Jerry Jones or an owner in Green Bay, and Aaron said, I'm going to go in a darkness retreat, he'd say, well, when you're done with that, I want an answer, or you're going to go in a darkness retreat. I'm going to send you to the Jets. You'll be dark for the rest of your career.
Right.
You tell me, when you were with Jerry or Wayne Huizenga, go back to all your owners, were there moments that an owner was actually really important to set a precedent, to be a voice, to hold people accountable? Because Favre and Aaron have gone on this retirement threat tour, both of them, for the last 5 years of their careers.
Yeah, I would say no. I mean, and that's probably not the answer you want to hear, but quite honestly, I was at Miami when Wayne Huizenga hired me, and Dan Marino was at the end of his career. And the first job that I had was go in and sit down and talk to Dan, who I knew was a fellow Pitt guy, University of Pittsburgh, and tell him that we were changing offenses and I didn't see there being a fit, that he could be on the team, but we were going to go a different direction, on and on. We hired Chan Gailey, who was going to do a lot of movement stuff, not to drop back. We were changing the Don Shula offense. When Jimmy was there, he kept that pretty much in place. I was completely getting a new playbook. And so I kind of went through that. Wayne Huizenga was never involved with it. Jerry Jones, when I was at the Cowboys, when Jimmy Johnson was there, Jerry Jones was never involved in what was going on with Troy Aikman. Never. It would have never happened. Jimmy would have left earlier if that was the case. I mean, he wouldn't have put up with it. So I wouldn't buy that.
Does it bother you? Does it bother you that Aaron has sort of a laissez-faire attitude on updating the Packers?
Yeah, it does, because last year we made a commitment to him. I mean, we really did. And yeah, it's a two-way street. I get that. But we kind of went through the same thing last year, and we made this big commitment, big money commitment. So it does bother me. I personally think he'll end up back there. I mean, yeah, there's a hook to go maybe to the Raiders with Devontae Adams because he's a buddy of his. There's a hook to go with Hackett to the Jets because it might be a similar offense. But I don't think Aaron Rodgers wants a lot of change. And he knows what he's getting in Green Bay with LaFleur. He knows the offense. He knows the receivers. I don't know. He knows what he wants to do. You talk about a guy that has an off-season routine now. All of a sudden you go to the Jets and they want you in the weight room 4 days a week. Routines change. That is not going to fit. That was the biggest thing with Dan Marino. And Dan and I talked about it. I says, hey, it ain't going to be like it was, Dan. We're going to start OTAs like tomorrow, and we're going to get in on the off-season program tomorrow. Whoa, Coach, I got off-season commitments. And I go, Dan had a lot of stuff going on, you can imagine. And it's been that way. He deserved it for years. And all of a sudden we were going to change that. The routine change in his mind, I think, was as much as anything. I think that's going to play a part in this with Aaron Rodgers at the end of the day. I truly do. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, listen, you drafted Jordan Love in the first round. At some point, you don't want to pay him before you've seen if he can play.
And, he's a tough one to sign. So, because if you make a trade for Aaron Rodgers, okay, if I'm at the Jets, the Packers are going to want multiple picks. Well, it can't be multiple picks. This is a one-year deal in their minds. We'll give you something for 1 year. And then if it happens the next year, maybe we'll do something for the next year. But I think it's a tough sell to get somebody to give up a lot to get Aaron Rodgers. Think about it. When you're back of your mind, you're thinking this could be a one and done situation. If he didn't like it at Green Bay, winning MVPs, he could surely have a problem with us, with a new system and new players, a new city, a new place to live, new media. I mean, so it's a 1 year deal in my mind if I'm on the other end thinking of giving up something for Aaron Rodgers.
All right, finally, where'd you go to dinner last night in Chicago? Because I'm going to be there in a few weeks. You know what's funny? You and I love the same.
You can't go where I go.
You and I love the same two cities. You and I love Chicago and Naples, Florida. It's my favorite. I love them.
I went to Tofano's over in Little Italy. Joey DeBono owns it. It's been his grandfather started in 1930.
Why can't I go there?
Well, I was kidding you. You can definitely go there. But I'll tell you what, the only thing about Tofano's, it's my favorite Italian place. No menus. When the grandmother used to write what they were cooking, she would write it on the chalkboard. And right now there's chalkboards in there. No menus to look at. And it's all cash. And if you order a glass of wine, they bring it in a little old glass and put the bottle on the table.
Love that. You know what? I love that. You know what? So I'm going to Naples next weekend. So I can't get into True Locks. You'd think I'd have some pull. I can't get into that damn place. There's never an opening. You know Naples. You can't get into any restaurants.
Where do you want to go? Where do you want to go?
Hold on.
Text me. I'm serious.
And today she goes, is Dave and his wife going to be down there? And I said, no, they're not. And I was thinking, because shit, Dave will get me in anywhere. Nobody cares about him. Yeah, I'm a talk show host. You're a former NFL head coach.
No, I know. I lived there for 26 years. I owned a restaurant down in Naples. I know all the guys. Yeah.
Handsome Harry's.
That's it.
True story to our audience. So I was talking to Dave once, and we were talking about Naples, and he goes, I have a place down there. I said, my favorite place to go have a cocktail is Handsome Harry's. And Dave's like, yeah, I owned it. I love that place.
Yeah. There we go. It's good. Right. Yeah, let me know when you come to Chicago. We'll go to Tofano's. I'll take you over there. Be good.
All right, buddy. Good seeing you, Coach.
Okay, thanks, Colin. Bye-bye.